Good morning, everyone. So Facebook's favorite independent fact checkers, politifact.com and factcheck.org, have made their way to YouTube. And this is the very first time I'm seeing this. That's why it's very important. That's why I'm making a video dedicated to exactly this. It's the very first time I've seen anything like it, where you type something in. Right here, you could see this. This is from a story that I did just a few days ago about alleged voter fraud in Georgia. You type in suitcase ballots Georgia, and you see this big independent fact check marker highlighted in blue that shows up on the top of the screen. I've never seen this before, so YouTube is trying to control information the same way that Facebook does now. You scroll through your Facebook feed and all you can see is independent fact checkers dispute this claim, missing context, politifact.com, factcheck.org. Now you're going to get the same thing on YouTube. It's the very first time I'm seeing this. So look, right here at the top, independent fact check, checked by factcheck.org, and then you click this little arrow, and who do you get? You get PolitiFact, the two independent fact checkers, which are apparently not left-wing activists masquerading as objective fact checkers, but they actually are, and we all know that. So what was the claim? For those of you who did not see my previous video or don't really have any insight onto what this story is about, I will quickly summarize this. So this is pretty damning footage. This is the very first time that we have actually caught alleged voter fraud on tape. And what had happened was in Fulton County, Georgia, at the State Farm Arena, they were tabulating ballots, and there was an election official that walked up to poll watchers and walked up to media reporters and said around 10:30 at night, well, counting is done for the night. We're going to resume tomorrow morning. So what happens? Well, if counting is done, the poll watchers leave, the reporters leave, and then shortly afterward, the four people that stayed behind pull out these giant boxes, these giant bins that look like suitcases. They pull them out from underneath a tablecloth, and they start tabulating ballots for the next 2 hours in secrecy with no one there, with no poll watchers observing the tabulation of the ballots at all. You can see all of this. It's very clear. It's all caught on tape. And in addition to that, there was two sworn affidavits from Republican poll watchers that stated they were told to leave because counting was finished. Keep in mind, it's a sworn affidavit, which means that they are saying so under the penalty of perjury. They can go to jail for several years if they are caught to be lying. So it's a pretty big deal. If you give sworn affidavit testimony, you are doing so with the penalty that you could go to jail if you're lying. So it's a pretty big deal that they made these sworn affidavits. So going through, let's take a look at the fact check. And I'm just going to go quickly through here. This is the game that the fact checkers play. They will look at the entire story, and then there is the core element of the story, and then there's some of the more nuanced elements. They will take a nuanced element that is incorrect, and they will make that the central focus of their fact check, and that's exactly what they did here. You see, they really focused on suitcases right here. Video does not show suitcases of illegal ballots in Georgia. There's video evidence of election workers in Georgia pooling, and I can't see what this word is right here, of ballots from suitcases proving fraud, rating false. You'll see the same thing on PolitiFact. No, Georgia election workers didn't kick out observers and illegally count suitcases. Video footage from Georgia shows suitcases filled with ballots pulled from and illegally counted after election observers were told to leave. Rating is false. So they really focus on the suitcases, which is, in my opinion, a nuanced element to the story. If you look at, if you could see the thumbnail right here on the very first thing that pops up under the sun, you could see under the thumbnail, which is kind of, you can see it's circled in red. You see this big black box that someone's carrying, like a suitcase, because it's big and black. There's two wheels on the bottom. There's a big telescoping handle. It looks like a suitcase. In the fact check, they claim that these are just normal containers that they use to tabulate ballots. There's nothing suspicious about these. Okay, great, understood. What they do not debunk at all, which is the core claim in the story, that poll watchers were told that counting was finished, and then after everyone left, after there was just four people that stayed behind, they continued to tabulate ballots in secrecy with no observers there. That was never debunked, and I'm going to show you because I'm going to click on the fact check. So we go to factcheck.org, And first, they summarize what had happened here in a few paragraphs. Then they break this down to a few sections. They dedicate several paragraphs to suitcases, saying, no, they're not actually suitcases. Right here, you can see standard secure containers that are ubiquitous in tabulation in Georgia. Okay, great. Understood. So that was the mistake that was made in the story. They called them suitcases, but they weren't in fact suitcases. They were just standard secure containers. But if you look at the video, they look a lot like suitcases. And then we get back down to the core claim. Observers' departure. Why did the observers depart? What is clear from our interviews with state officials is that at some point the elections workers did evidently plan to stop counting votes, which coincides with the core claim. It doesn't debunk it at all. Fulton County Elections Director Rick Barron also made that clear during a special virtual public meeting on December 4th. He said that certain staff that were on the cutting stations, that were on the flattening stations, that were extracting from the inner envelopes, those staff left as work completed. I found out sometime, I think a little after 10:30 p.m., that they were going to cease operations, and I told them not to do that, he said. He added that at about 11:15 p.m., they were fully scanning again. Pick, so just so you understand, Pick was the name of the attorney that presented this information during the hearing. Pick claimed that witnesses said that a woman came out to announce, we're going to stop counting, everyone go home, saying Republican observers were forced to leave, but Barron said that no announcement was ever made to leave for anyone to leave. Affidavits from two Republican field organizers referenced by Pick do not claim that they or the media were ever directly told or forced to leave. Instead, the observers say that they left after a woman who they believed was a supervisor yelled to workers in the room to cease operations and return the next day. The affidavits say that much of the room, except for a few employees, had cleared out. So all of this is verified by the video. You guys can watch the video for yourselves. If you just search on YouTube, Suitcase Ballots Georgia, you can find there's over like a 30-minute video clip where you can see there's like 4 different surveillance camera clips, and you could see the entire room. You could see there's many people in the room. You could see this woman walk up and talk to some of the Republican observers, talk to reporters. Everyone kind of clears out around the same time. They pull out these giant boxes from underneath the tablecloth and begin tabulating ballots. Sterling said in a December 4th interview with him that it did not appear there was any official announcement made to observers or press, but there's no audio to prove that one way or another, which this is strange. So Gabriel Sterling, he was, I guess he's a Republican. I don't know what his exact position is, but he's a Republican. It seems kind of strange that he is saying this without, I mean, they have sworn affidavits with Republicans saying that they were told to leave, and there's no audio on the video, on the film. You could just see this woman speaking to them, and he has concluded that there was no announcement made to leave. What is he basing that off of? So he doesn't have access to any evidence that we haven't seen. And if somehow he does, why doesn't he present it to the public? So if he's going off the same evidence that we have all seen, we have 2 sworn affidavits. In addition to that, we have video evidence of a election supervisor speaking to these Republican poll watchers. Shortly afterward, everyone clears the room. So what evidence does he have in concluding that no announcement was made to observers or the press in order to leave? And then the story goes on to say on December 5th, Frances Watson, the chief investigator from the Secretary of State's office, said in an affidavit that after reviewing the video and conducting investigations, her investigators found that observers and media were not asked to leave, but simply left after they saw workers whose job was to open the ballots leave. She said the investigation remains open. So they are claiming that Republican poll watchers just decided to leave even though they knew tabulation of ballots was still going to continue. And in other words, these Republican poll watchers who sign sworn affidavits under the penalty of perjury are lying. They have no evidence of this. So essentially, the only thing they have done to try to debunk this is just say it didn't happen without presenting any evidence at all to suggest that this is in fact true. To the contrary, we have a lot of evidence that what the Republican poll watchers were claiming did in fact happen. Because, once again, We have video footage of many people in the room, of reporters in the room, and we have Republican poll watchers in the room. They were spoken to, they were approached by this election supervisor. They cleared the room shortly afterward, and they've signed sworn affidavits. So that's where we are. There is no compelling evidence at all that is presented in this fact check that debunks the core claim of the story. So once again, the big problem here was they called them suitcases. So they got to just hyper-focus on a small, nuanced element of the story and say fact check false. But as you could see in the fact check, they didn't present any evidence at all to prove that these people were not asked to leave. If anything, they presented evidence, even you can see on the very first part of this, going back to the very first part, what is clear from our interviews, and let's just make this big, because this is how important it is. I'm going to make this real big. What is clear from our interviews with state officials is that at some point the election workers did evidently plan to stop counting votes. If anything, it proves what these Republican poll watchers were claiming. The only thing they can do from there is to go on and say, well, we don't think that happened. That's it. They can't present any evidence at all. And they're saying fact check false. When, let's go down here, it even clearly says that it's still under right here. She said the investigation remains open. So you got a bunch of people saying, no, that didn't happen, that weren't actually there, and then the investigation remains open anyway. So at best, you can say it's just inconclusive, that we don't know for sure what happened. But of course, what do? Fact check false, and they hyper-focus on a small nuance, which is the suitcases. So I don't know where this is going to lead to. I mean, I would assume we're going to see way more of these independent fact checks here on YouTube, the same way that Facebook is policed by these left-wing hacks that masquerade as objective fact checkers. But very first time I'm seeing this here on YouTube, so I really wanted to point this out. I think it's pretty important to watch as this change starts taking place on YouTube. That first, I mean, we saw this on Facebook, I don't know, about a year or so ago, when you first started seeing all these independent fact checks popping up, and now we're seeing this for the very first time on YouTube. So that's my video. Hope you like it. Please leave your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe, and I will see you all next time.